He humiliated me at his own wedding. In front of family, friends, and strangers, my son looked me dead in the eye and called my life's work dirty money. The same money that had kept a roof over his head, food on his plate, and clothes on his back. For months, I carried the weight of his debts in silence, answering collectors, draining my savings, watching him strut around like a king while I suffocated. Everyone told me to keep quiet, to let it go. But what they didn't know was that I held every receipt, every lie, every weapon he handed me while mocking me as weak. And when I finally pulled the trigger, his empire crumbled in front of everyone. Stay with me, because you're about to hear how a mother went from being her son's victim to the storm that destroyed him. I never thought I'd live to hear my own son spit the word dirty at me. But he did. He looked me straight in the eyes, on the day of his wedding, when I handed him a gift wrapped in white and gold, and he said, "I don't want your money, Mom. It's dirty. Keep it." My name is Eleanor. I'm 55 years old, a widow, and I've spent more than 3 decades working my fingers raw to build a small but successful catering business in our town. People knew me as the woman who never missed a wedding cake delivery, the one who could turn the simplest reception into a feast. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. At least, I thought it was. I raised my only son, Michael, alone after his father passed away in a factory accident. I gave him everything. Every dime I earned went to his education, his books, his dreams. I cooked for other people's weddings so one day, when it was his turn, he could walk into his own without a single worry. And when he graduated high school, he came to me with those pleading eyes that looked so much like his father's, and begged me to co-sign a loan for his student debt. "Mom," he had said, clutching my hand, "this is my ticket. I'll make you proud." How could I say no? So I signed. I signed away my credit, my security, my peace of mind, because I believed in him. Because I thought blood meant loyalty. But fast forward almost 10 years, to his wedding day, standing in front of 100 guests with my heart swelling with pride. I handed him an envelope with a check, $10,000. It wasn't just money. It was my love, my sacrifice, my way of saying, "This is for your future, my son. You'll never struggle the way I did." And then, that word. Dirty. It sliced through me sharper than any knife in my kitchen. Everyone froze. His bride, Emily, tugged at his sleeve nervously, whispering for him to calm down, but he didn't. He laughed. He laughed as if I was some cheap hustler trying to buy his approval. His friends chuckled behind him, not even hiding their smirks. He said my money came from cheap labor and manipulative contracts. That my business was exploitative. That I fed off the desperation of immigrants who worked for me. I couldn't even breathe. My throat closed, and all I could do was clutch the envelope tighter. My hands shook so badly I thought I'd rip it in two. It was a wedding. His wedding. The one I had dreamed of since he was a boy in diapers. And in front of everyone, he made me the villain. People stared. Some pitied me. Some judged me. My sister-in-law pulled me aside, her face pale, whispering, "Just leave, Eleanor. Don't make a scene." Don't make a scene? My son had just disowned me with words sharper than any disinheritance paper. He had humiliated me, spat on the very foundation of my life's work, and branded me as tainted. I left, yes. But not because I was weak. I left because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a slip of anger. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. This was who he had become. And as I sat in my car, the envelope still trembling in my lap, I remembered that one signature. That one damn signature I had placed for his student loan years ago. Do you know what happens when someone doesn't pay back their student loan? Do you know whose phone rings at 2 a.m. with collectors snarling through the line? Do you know whose credit score shatters when payments are missed? Mine. Mine. For years, I had quietly covered him. I had paid installments when he forgot, shielded him from consequences, even when it meant skipping my own bills. Because I loved him. Because I believed he'd grow up, settle down, and one day look back and say, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for never letting me fall." But instead, he stood there in a tuxedo, sneering, calling me dirty. And that was the moment something inside me cracked. I didn't cry, not then. The tears came later, in the dark, when the weight of 30 years of sacrifice came crashing down. But in that moment, at that wedding, I made a silent promise to myself. If he thought my money was dirty, fine. He wouldn't have to touch another cent of it. But he would finally taste the dirt he had buried me under. Because I was done. I was done being the safety net, the silent benefactor, the invisible backbone. He wanted to humiliate me. He wanted to brand me as tainted. Then he would learn what it meant to have the ground ripped out from under his feet. And all it would take was one phone call. One phone call to the bank. Because his debt, the very debt that had given him his degree, his so-called career, his standing to look down on me, was tied to my name. And with one call, I could pull the thread and watch everything unravel. But here's the thing about revenge, it doesn't strike all at once. It brews. It simmers. It whispers to you in the quiet hours of the night, urging you to bide your time, to sharpen your blade before you cut. So I didn't call that day. Not yet. No. I went home, sat at my kitchen table, and opened the old, dusty folder I had buried in the back of my drawer. The one with his loan papers. My signature. His promises. I ran my fingers over the ink, the faint indentation where my pen had pressed too hard. And I whispered to myself, he thinks I'm dirty? He hasn't seen dirt yet. That was the night Eleanor, the forgiving mother, the endless provider, died. And someone else, someone colder, sharper, unbreakable, took her place. The morning after the wedding, I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that makes the walls of your house feel heavier, like they're pressing in on you. I brewed my coffee, but it tasted bitter. Maybe because every sip dragged me back to the night before, the look in Michael's eyes when he rejected me, the smirks of his friends, the word dirty echoing like a curse I couldn't shake. I told myself maybe he'd call. Maybe he'd realize he'd gone too far, that humiliation wasn't the way to start a marriage. But my phone stayed silent. Instead, 2 days later, I received a bill. A thick, unfriendly envelope with red letters screaming across the top, "Past due notice." My stomach dropped. I didn't even have to open it to know what it was. Michael's student loan. The one I'd co-signed. The one he was supposed to be paying for years now. My hands trembled as I tore it open. The numbers glared at me, missed payments, accumulating interest, late fees stacking like bricks on my chest. It was thousands. Not hundreds. Thousands. And then the phone rang. A man's voice, sharp, rehearsed, and merciless. "Mrs. Eleanor Carter? We're calling regarding the outstanding balance on the loan co-signed under your name. Payments have been consistently missed, and as guarantor, you are legally responsible. When can we expect payment?" I nearly dropped the phone. My voice cracked. "What do you mean missed?" "My son. He said he was handling it. He promised." The collector didn't care. His tone didn't waver. "Ma'am, promises don't pay debt. You either bring the account current, or your credit rating will be impacted. We can set up a payment plan right now." I hung up before I could cry into the receiver. My hands were clammy, my pulse racing. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the envelope, bile rising in my throat. Michael hadn't just insulted me. He had been lying to me. For years. I called him that afternoon. He didn't answer. So I called again. And again. Finally, he picked up, his voice irritated. Mom, what? I'm busy. Can't this wait? I clenched the phone so hard it left marks on my palm. Busy? Michael, I just got a notice about your loan. They're saying you haven't been paying. That I'm responsible. What is going on? Silence. Then a laugh. A laugh that made my blood run cold. Relax, Mom. It's not a big deal. Everyone misses a few payments. I'll catch up eventually. Eventually? My voice cracked. Do you understand what this means for me? For my credit? For everything I've worked for? He sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You're overreacting. You always do. Look, you've got money, don't you? Just cover it. You covered it before, right? What's the difference? The words hit me harder than the rejection at his wedding. Just cover it. Like I was an ATM. Like 30 years of sacrifice had turned me into nothing but a bottomless pocket for him to dip into. Michael, I whispered, my throat tight, I gave you everything. I believed in you. And this is how you treat me? Don't start with the guilt trip. His tone sharpened, defensive, dismissive. I'm not like you, slaving away in some kitchen. I'm building a future. Sometimes that takes risks. If you can't handle it, maybe stay out of my life. Stay out of his life. I froze, my breath catching. This wasn't the boy I had raised. This wasn't the little boy who used to fall asleep on my lap, whispering he'd take care of me when he grew up. No, this was a man who had learned to weaponize my love, to use my sacrifices as his safety net, and spit in my face when I asked for respect. I hung up without another word. My hands shook, but not from sadness this time. From rage. Over the next weeks, the signs became clearer. He stopped returning my calls altogether. When I visited his apartment, Emily opened the door with a forced smile but wouldn't meet my eyes. I caught glimpses of luxury items, new electronics, designer shoes, things no man drowning in student debt should have been buying. And then I overheard something that cemented everything. I had gone to pick up a catering order downtown when I saw Michael and Emily at a cafe, laughing with friends. I stayed hidden, half ashamed, half desperate to understand what had gone wrong. His voice carried across the cafe. My mom? She'll never stop paying. She's too proud. She'd rather bankrupt herself than admit I can't handle things. Honestly, I'm not worried. She's an easy mark. An easy mark. The room spun. My vision blurred. I stumbled back into the street before they could see me, the words cutting deeper than any knife. In that moment, the last remnants of denial shattered. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't immaturity. This was betrayal, calculated and deliberate. I drove home with my knuckles white against the steering wheel. And that night, for the first time, I didn't dream of my husband's smile or my son's childhood laughter. I dreamed of flames, cold, controlled flames, that burned away every trace of weakness in me. He thought I was his safety net. His eternal shield. His easy mark. But what he didn't realize was that the net could be cut. And the fall? Oh, the fall would be his alone. The calls from the debt collectors didn't stop. They grew sharper, more threatening. Each voicemail was a knife, cutting into the quiet of my home. Mrs. Carter, failure to bring this account current will result in legal action. Mrs. Carter, your credit score has already been impacted. We need payment now. Every time, I felt the noose tighten. I finally swallowed my pride and called Michael again, desperate for him to take responsibility. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice groggy, as if I'd interrupted his nap. Michael, please, listen. They're threatening to sue. They'll come after me. Do you understand what that means? He groaned. God, Mom, you're so dramatic. You've always been like this. Just pay it off, okay? Stop making it a big deal. Pay it off. My voice cracked. It's your debt. Your responsibility. And then he said it. The sentence that broke me in ways his wedding insult hadn't. Maybe you should have thought about that before signing, Mom. Nobody forced you. You wanted to play the savior, so live with it. The phone slipped from my hand. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the kitchen floor. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the walls down with my bare hands. But all I could do was sit there, staring at the linoleum tiles, my breath ragged, my heart hammering in my chest. He had me. He knew it. And he reveled in it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every sacrifice I had ever made. The double shifts. The nights I stayed up frosting cakes until my fingers bled. The bills I skipped so he could have books, clothes, tutors. And for what? To be mocked. To be chained to his failures. By morning, I thought I had cried myself dry. But the worst hadn't even come yet. A week later, I went to the bank. I wanted to negotiate, to see if there was any way out. I walked into the sterile, fluorescent-lit office and sat across from a young man who looked barely older than Michael. He adjusted his glasses, clicked through the computer, and then frowned. Mrs. Carter. There's something you should know. My stomach twisted. What is it? He turned the screen toward me. Rows of numbers, transactions, loan extensions, things I hadn't authorized. Your son has been applying for deferments and additional credit under this account. Because you're the cosigner, these approvals are tied to your financial profile. The debt isn't just past due. It's grown significantly larger. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. How much larger? He hesitated, as if bracing me for impact. Close to $80,000. The room spun. $80,000. I clutched the edge of the desk to steady myself. That's impossible. I never. He shook his head. I'm sorry. But his applications were approved. With your name on the account, you're just as liable. 80,000. The number echoed in my head like a death sentence. When I left the bank, the sunlight felt cruel, mocking. People bustled around me, laughing, living, while my world crumbled. That evening, I drove to Michael's apartment. I didn't call ahead. I didn't knock politely. I pounded on the door until Emily opened it, her face pale. Eleanor, she began, but I shoved past her. Michael was on the couch, a game controller in his hand, a half-empty beer on the table. He looked up, irritated, as if I were an unwelcome guest. Mom, what the hell? You can't just barge in. I snapped. $80,000, Michael. 80,000. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? He rolled his eyes. Oh, God, they told you, didn't they? Calm down. It's just numbers. Debt isn't real until you make it real. Everyone lives with it. I felt my heart shatter. Just numbers? Do you know what I've sacrificed? Do you even care what this does to me? He set the controller down and leaned back, smirking. You'll figure it out. You always do. Honestly, Mom, you should be grateful. Without you, I wouldn't have gotten my degree. Think of this as your contribution to my success. Grateful. He wanted me to be grateful. Emily stood frozen by the door, her eyes darting between us. She tried to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a defense, but Michael silenced her with a glare. That's when I realized something chilling. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even sorry. He was proud. He had built his comfort, his arrogance, on the foundation of my sacrifices, and he thought it was his right. I stumbled out of the apartment, my chest tight, my vision clouded with tears. I barely remember the drive home. I just remember sitting in the dark, staring at the stack of bills, the final nail hammered into my coffin. I thought I had lost everything already. But that night, I lost the last fragile thread of hope that my son would change. And yet, in that darkness, something else sparked. Rage. Cold, deliberate rage. I pulled out the folder of loan documents again, my fingers tracing the paper. Buried among the signatures, the fine print, I noticed something, a clause. A small, overlooked line that gave me the power to call the loan. To demand full repayment immediately, from him, not me. It was risky. It was nuclear. But it was there. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt power. He thought I was trapped. He thought I would always bail him out. But he had underestimated me. He had forgotten that the same hands that built him up could just as easily tear him down. And I was ready. I didn't rush. No, revenge done in haste is messy. And I wanted precision. I wanted Michael to feel every ounce of the weight he had shoved onto my shoulders. For days, I studied the documents. Every clause, every condition. I called the bank, playing the role of the naive mother who just wanted to understand her obligations. I asked innocent questions, batted my lashes at the loan officer, and let him talk. And talk he did. That's when I confirmed it. As cosigner, I had the right to call in the loan. To force immediate repayment. It was the nuclear option. And Michael, with his arrogance, his missed payments, and his trail of reckless spending, had no shield left. But first, I needed evidence. I started quietly. I traced his transactions, the ones I had caught glimpses of in the bank system. Luxury sneakers. Concert tickets. Gambling apps. Vacations booked under his name. My chest burned as I pieced it all together. He hadn't just been careless, he had been living lavishly while letting me drown. I kept receipts. Screenshots. Statements. A paper trail that screamed his selfishness. And then, one evening, I made the call. My voice didn't shake this time. This is Eleanor Carter. I want to initiate a demand for full repayment of the co-signed loan. The silence on the other end was delicious. The banker cleared his throat, clearly surprised. Mrs. Carter. Are you certain? This will transfer liability directly. Yes, I said, my tone like steel. I'm certain. Within 48 hours, Michael's world began to crumble. His phone must have lit up with the same relentless collectors that had haunted me. Except now, they weren't calling me. They were calling him. His accounts were frozen, his credit strangled, his carefully curated image of success unraveling thread by thread. I didn't stop there. I waited until Sunday, when he and Emily invited the family over for a casual brunch. I arrived early, carrying not food but my laptop and a thick folder. The apartment was spotless, staged like a showroom. Emily greeted me with that brittle smile again, clearly stretched thin under the weight of Michael's ego. He swaggered into the living room, wine glass in hand. "Mom," he said smoothly, "I was hoping you'd stop acting dramatic. Maybe today we can be civil." Civil. I sat down, opened my laptop, and projected the bank statements onto his pristine white wall. Every eye in the room turned as the numbers flashed. Missed payments. Luxury purchases. Loan extensions. Michael froze, his smirk faltering. "What is this?" I looked him dead in the eyes. "Evidence. Every dollar you stole from me. Every lie you built on my back. And now? Now it's your problem." His face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already did," I cut in, my voice sharp as glass. "The loan has been called. Collectors will be after you, not me. Your accounts? Frozen. Your credit? Ruined. Congratulations, Michael, you're finally independent." The silence was heavy, broken only by Emily's gasp. She covered her mouth, her eyes wide, tears pooling. She whispered, "Michael. Is this true?" He stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. She's exaggerating. Mom's always been controlling, always. I slammed the folder shut. Don't you dare twist this. You called me an easy mark. You mocked me at your wedding, spat on my life's work, and drained me dry. Well, the mark has woken up. Emily's hands trembled as she pushed her chair back. I can't believe this. You lied to me, Michael. You told me the debts were small, that your mother was paranoid. He lunged toward her, desperate, but she pulled away. No. I'm done. I won't be dragged down with you. She grabbed her purse and fled, the door slamming behind her. Michael turned back to me, his mask of arrogance shattered. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Real, raw fear. You've ruined me, he hissed. No, I said coldly. You ruined yourself. I just stopped cleaning up your mess. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands, muttering curses under his breath. The family members who had been watching in stunned silence finally spoke. My sister-in-law, the same woman who had once told me to just leave quietly, looked at me with wide eyes. Eleanor. I had no idea. I closed my laptop, stood up, and smoothed my jacket. Nobody did. Because I carried it all in silence. But not anymore. And with that, I walked out. My heels clicked against the floor like a victory march. For once, I wasn't the victim trailing behind. I was the storm leaving destruction in my wake. Outside, the air felt sharper, lighter. The sky seemed bluer than it had in years. Revenge wasn't always about screaming, about fire and fury. Sometimes, it was a quiet, calculated pull of a thread. And watching everything unravel. Michael had thought he buried me under debt, humiliation, and shame. But in the end, he had handed me the very weapon I used to destroy him. And as I drove away, I whispered to myself, dirty money, huh? Let's see how clean you feel now. The weeks after my confrontation with Michael felt surreal. For the first time in years, my phone stopped buzzing with collection calls. The sleepless nights, the stomach-twisting dread every time the mail arrived, they melted away. I had thought freedom would feel like silence, like finally standing in a room without echoes of shame. But it wasn't silence. It was clarity. Michael tried, of course. He called me, left furious voicemails. Accused me of betrayal, of destroying his life. I listened once, then deleted every message. His words had no teeth anymore. He was a cornered man, lashing out at shadows. Emily filed for separation within a month. I wasn't surprised. She had been balancing on a tightrope for too long, smiling for the world while Michael siphoned everyone around him dry. When I saw her again, she was pale but steady. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have believed you sooner. I touched her hand gently. Don't apologize. You loved him. Love makes fools of us all. But now, you're free. She cried then, soft tears of release. As for Michael, word spread quickly. His perfect reputation cracked like glass under a hammer. The friends who had cheered him on, drinking from his bottle service and posing in his luxury cars, vanished the second the collectors arrived. It was brutal. And it was fair. One evening, I sat in my small kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at the folder of documents that had once felt like chains around my neck. Now, they were just papers. Pages of proof that I had survived, endured, and reclaimed my power. I thought back to that night at his wedding. His sneer. His words, dirty money. At the time, they had gutted me, carved open old scars I had tried so hard to hide. But now I realized something profound. Michael wasn't wrong. My money was dirty. But not in the way he meant. It was stained with sacrifice. With sleepless nights, double shifts, bills delayed so he could eat. It was dirty because it carried the sweat of survival, the compromises of a woman who had clawed her way through life. But that dirt, that grit, was sacred. It was the soil from which resilience grew. And Michael, with his greed and entitlement, could never understand that. He wanted money spotless, effortless, handed to him without struggle. But the truth? The cleanest money is the dirtiest earned, the kind that costs pieces of your soul to make. I smiled to myself, a bittersweet smile. For so long, I had believed my worth was measured by what I provided. That love was proven by sacrifice. That silence was noble. But silence had nearly destroyed me. Speaking up, exposing him, cutting the ties, wasn't cruelty. It was survival. It was reclamation. I looked out my window at the dusky sky, the horizon glowing faintly pink. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future that wasn't bound to Michael's shadow. Maybe I would travel. Maybe I would start a small business. Or maybe, simply, I would live quietly, my life, my rules. The possibilities were endless. A week later, I attended a small family gathering. The same relatives who once judged me with pursed lips and whispered doubts now looked at me with a new kind of respect. One cousin leaned close and murmured, "You were brave, Eleanor. Most people wouldn't have dared." I didn't feel brave. I felt awake. As the night went on, laughter filled the air, children chasing each other through the backyard. For once, I wasn't carrying invisible chains. When I returned home, I placed the folder of loan documents into a box and sealed it shut. I wrote a single word across the lid, lesson. Because that's what it was. Not just for me, but for anyone who ever trusted too blindly, loved too deeply, and paid too dearly. The lesson. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never confuse sacrifice with obligation. And above all, never let anyone convince you that your hard-earned survival is shameful. Michael had tried to make me believe I was powerless. But in the end, he gave me the greatest gift of all, the chance to remember who I was before his shadow. As I slid the box into the back of my closet, I whispered into the quiet, "This chapter is closed." And with that, I turned off the light, my heart lighter than it had been in decades. The storm had passed. I had not only survived, I had reclaimed myself.